Gender-based violence is not only linked to adverse health outcomes, but also affects women's ability to secure and undertake employment and their participation in recovery efforts. Programs that prevent and respond to gender-based violence against women are therefore critical for reducing gender inequality and improving population health and economic growth. I'm coming at gender-based violence from a mental health perspective. Mental health impacts are devastating. There is an exponential rise in mental health illness, including depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicidal ideation for women who have experienced violence and abuse. The reverse relationship is also true. Women living with severe mental illness are significantly more likely to fall victims to violence. In fact, they are 6 times more likely to experience sexual violence during their life. Gender-based violence has also been associated with adverse physical and psychosocial outcomes that may contribute to mental health problems, such as unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and discrimination, stigmatization, and ostracism within the family or community. There is a great need for us all to pull together to raise awareness around gender-based violence. It is hugely prevalent in our society and in South Africa, but all over the world. And we as a community, as a global community, need to raise that awareness as women, as men, the men that we raise, so that we all know what we should be doing in society and how we can contribute to eradicating gender-based violence in the world. The role for men to play in gender-based violence is to become involved in raising awareness. It's not just the responsibility of women in our society to be uplifting other women and empowering them and raising that awareness. Men need to step up and be part of the solution in eradicating gender-based violence. There's so many different ways that can go about that. And I know that there are a lot of organizations that are out there, but it also starts with the boys in our world, those boys that grow up having to witness gender-based violence within their families, thinking that is okay and it's acceptable behavior when it's not. And that men can step up and guide those boys in our communities so that they know what is right and what is wrong and how they should be treating women as they grow up. That's what needs to happen, and that's how men can become involved in terms of helping raise our boys so that they know how to treat women in society and in their communities. So women and children are more vulnerable for gender-based violence. It's kind of the society that they have grown up in. It's almost like we started on a back foot and we were more vulnerable in a weaker position. But what I've noticed over the years is that women are actually coming to the forefront. We are taking a stand and being able to support one another, to make other women realize that they don't have to be in these vulnerable positions, and that I think with more equal opportunities and women being able to be in careers and raising their children in ways that they want to, helps eradicate that gender inequality. But we've just got so much work to do. And so many women think that they get stuck in those positions of vulnerability. And sometimes they just feel that there's no way out for them, which is really understandable when you're in what you thought was a loving relationship. And now you're experiencing and being exposed to violence and your children, and you want to protect them. And yet sometimes you just don't know how you're going to go about doing that, because the thought of leaving your partner is just terrifying, because you don't know what's lying ahead. And maybe they rely on them financially, emotionally. There's so many different aspects when it comes to a relationship. And it's really tricky for a woman to actually get up, take her children and leave. And it's also really complicated in terms of where you go. You know, we have fantastic resources in place, but it's difficult to go to a refuge, to up sticks and go if you're going to another family member. It depends on what your support structure looks like. So there's so much that comes into play for women when they wanting to leave that vulnerable space that they find themselves in. I mean, why do men abuse, you know, physically, emotionally, financially, sexually abuse women and children? And, you know, it stems from within our society, where they've grown up on it. I mentioned earlier that how men can help is that we need to raise our boys in a specific way. Prevention is better than cure, and we've got to get to the root cause of why our men and the boys in our communities are doing it. And the reason is that they're doing it is it's what you see, it's what you're exposed to, whether it's in your family setting, your bigger family setting, it could be in your communities, it could start in the schools, it's what you're exposed to. And then you go to media, social media, what you watch on TV, what you see in the movies. There's so much that goes on in one's world in terms of what they're exposed to. If you don't have the correct role models in your support structure, how is a boy meant to grow up knowing what is right and what is wrong? It's really, really difficult. And that's where we as a global community can come together and help to kind of eradicate that thinking and give these boys role models so that they know and they can grow up knowing how to treat other women. That's what's important. And that is, you know, that's part of a reason as to why men, boys become violent in partnerships. And it's really, really sad. So the interactions with children when they're young are so crucial in terms of, I mean, play is something that is part of a child's growth, how they grow as an individual and how they think about the world and what they're exposed to. And it starts within the family initially before a child is exposed to school. And that's where they need to be learning right from wrong in terms of siblings and what's okay to be sibling rivalry and what goes too far. And that's where parents or whoever is the carer needs to take that responsibility and communicate with their children of what is right and wrong. And then you've got the next step in terms of going to school, where so the parents or the carers have less input in terms of how they're interacting. And then at school, hopefully by the time they've got there, they know what's right or wrong. And teachers can also teach the children in terms of what's right and wrong, because those integrations, those friendship circles that they're forming there are what they're going to take later on in life. And if there starts aggression early and a child it's not communicated and they're not understanding why it's wrong, that's just going to escalate further and further into their teenage years and into their adult years, and who knows where that's going to go. So that child psychology around play and what's appropriate and what's right is just crucial to their whole upbringing and what their views of the world will be and what their morals are going to be. You can see how that's formed. The issue around fathers, children and gender-based violence is that our children lack that male role model, which is crucial. So in terms of, one parent families, you know, it's something that's very common. It happens, it's all over the world. It's a normal occurrence these days. But children that grow up without their fathers, for whatever reason that is, and do not have other male role models within their family system, can contribute and create, because now they're lost, they don't quite know. And it depends on what role the mum is taking, because often parents end up trying to take on a dual role, but a mum trying to take a role of dad and or vice versa, it's not that straightforward. And our poor children and the boys who are fatherless, they become lost. And that's where we speak about the child psychology, and they learn things, and they might learn things in their communities or at school, but they might not be learning the lessons that they should be learning. They might be exposed to aggression or violence, and it might be deemed that it's okay and that's really normal, or because they may be feeling like they don't have a sense of belonging. The gang culture comes in when they get older, and they join they join gangs, which could go into other gang behavior, but they have this sense of belonging, which is what we long for as a human being. We all want to belong to something, whether it's our family, our community, even our colleagues that we work with. That sense of belonging is so important. But then the issue is that they can start to learn and take on the wrong behaviors, and their values and their morals get all mixed up, but they've got nobody to guide them, which can then obviously then result in them being in relationships which are terribly unhealthy, that can become violent. And through that lack of having males and male role models in their lives, this is what could possibly happen. And that's how it contributes to gender-based violence. The way forward in my opinion, I mean, sure, it's like you've got to take a little bit of bite of a time. It's like having an elephant, and you've just got to like bite away at it. But the key is that we have to be speaking about it. And 16 days of activism is great, and it's wonderful, and it's a fantastic concept. However, sadly, gender-based violence happens 365 days of the year, every year. And what we can't afford is to take our foot off. So we are really involved in those 16 days. And after that, it's like, then what happens? And I feel that we need to be consistently raising awareness. Gender-based violence, like we're having COVID, we're living in a pandemic. Gender-based violence is a pandemic. Was it in our faces and on our news reports and in all the articles and all over social media before COVID hit? No, it wasn't. But it's a pandemic in itself, and it's a global pandemic. But there's just not enough, I feel, that's happening in terms of that constant awareness of what is happening. And us coming together, as I've said, it's a global problem. So like-minded people, leaders of this world, coming together to show the way and pave the way of how to go about eradicating gender-based violence, because that's what we need to do. But right now, that way of doing it is just, there is so much that we need to do. And it's a continuous drive of raising awareness, of making sure that there's support out there for women, for children, for perpetrators, for the young boys of this world that need those role models, so that we can get to the root cause. Because men can change, that's fine, but we've got to prevent it from happening. So the boys that are coming into the world now, they need to be raised and grow up knowing what is right and what is wrong. That is how eventually we will get rid of gender-based violence, and it will cease to exist.